Shana Tova again. With the recent release of The Rings of Power, a television show based on J.R.R. Tolkien's books, and since we're all really just getting to know each other, I feel it's only right to share with you that Lord of the Rings has been a very important part of my life. When I was 21, Peter Jackson's movies began to come out, and my early 20s were a season in my life when I apparently had hours upon hours to spend in Middle-earth, marveling at the magnitude and magnificence of the world that Jackson, inspired by Tolkien, built for us. The most famous moment of those movies occurs, I think, in the first one, Fellowship of the Ring, when Gandalf the Grey, played by Ian McKellen, places himself between the band of humble fighters and the Demon of Might, the Balrog, on a very narrow bridge in, of course, the Mines of Moria, and he shouts with his staff in the air. Remember what he shouts? "You shall not pass." I thank you for being there for that. I suspect that many of us in our mind's eye can see that moment in the movie, Gandalf standing on that very narrow bridge, facing off with this huge, shadowy, fiery monster filled with strident determination to stop its advance, to give his friends a chance to continue their mission to save the world. If you happen to be someone who missed this transformative chapter in American cinema, then perhaps you can think of Harry Potter facing off with Lord Voldemort to save the magical world, or Endgame with its dramatic last stand against Thanos, the stakes the highest imaginable as the Avengers gather to save literally the entire universe. If you haven't had a chance to see any of these, I guess we know what you'll be repenting for on Yom Kippur. These dramatic moments in our popular culture explore, as only archetypal heroes' journeys can, how powerful it is to stand up to forces of darkness, how profound acting out of love and compassion can be. And they are successful, of course, because they are designed to do just that. The writers who create them want to make it clear how high the stakes are, who the bad guys are, why it's hard and scary to be courageous, and how much our lives change when we are. And so they construct a new world. They know, and we know, that we long to be heroic in our everyday lives too. So they write the script that way. So it will show us a mirror of our deepest longings. When a character speaks to the embodiment of anger and hate and pain in protection of the ones they love and the life they cherish, when they champion over their natural instincts to run and hide, when they say, "You shall not pass," we remember who we want to be. The idea that great scripts create new worlds did not originate in our time. In a lovely midrash from Bereshit Rabbah, a collection of legends from the 5th and 6th centuries, the rabbis imagined the Torah itself speaking to us, explaining how God created the world. Ani hayiti kali umnuto shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu. I, the Torah says, was the artisan's tool of God. The Midrash goes on to say, in the way of the world, a king of flesh and blood who builds a castle does not do so from his own knowledge, but rather from the knowledge of an architect. And the architect does not build it from her own knowledge, but rather she has scrolls and books in order to know how to make the windows and the doors and the rooms. So too did God gaze into the Torah to create the world. This midrash famously asserts that God, the great architect of the universe, used the Torah, its wisdom and guidance as a blueprint in order to create the world whose birth we celebrate today. If you are paying close attention and therefore are wondering how God used the Torah to create the world when God had not yet written the Torah, when God created the world, it's a good question. I would refer you perhaps to the movie Inception, or just urge you to please suspend your disbelief. The rabbis do stuff like this. And in their minds, the Torah was the script from which the great drama of creation is played out. It is Rosh Hashanah, the first day of a new year in our lives and the beginning of our 10 days of repentance. Each year, this anniversary of creation is a moment to consider the question, who do I want to be? And to make changes that bring us closer to living whatever the answer is. And even though it lacks some of the glamour of Hollywood, our tradition offers us this Torah as a world-building script. And the suspense of the story is whether we can follow it, whether we can let it recenter us, and thereby do the Jewish version of saving the universe, leading a meaningful life filled with tikkun olam, acts big and small that bring healing to a world that is feeling deeply broken. The world in which we exist is changing, in some cases crumbling, right before our eyes. Perhaps there was a time, that felt simpler to many, when we thought we knew what our priorities should be, what a successful, well-lived life looks like, thought we understood how to be a good citizen, a good neighbor, deeply respected, perhaps, our political leaders and community servants, had faith that the future would look something like the present, felt secure about the very earth beneath our feet. But that time seems very far away now. Instead, we are living in a moment when we feel compelled to question almost everything that we once were sure of. It is profoundly disorienting. There is a story in the Talmud that comes to address moments when we feel profoundly disoriented, lost along our way. In Tractate Shabbat, it is written, Rav Huna said, if a person was walking in the wilderness and does not know when Shabbat is, when the Sabbath is, one should count 6 days from that moment and then observe Sabbath on the 7th. Chia Bar Rav says, if you're walking and you lose track of the days, one should observe the Sabbath and then count another 6 days. About what are they arguing, the Talmud says? One holds like the creation of the world, 6 days of non-Shabbat followed by a Sabbath, and the other holds like the experience of the first human beings, experiencing Shabbat first, followed by 6 weekdays, as Adam and Eve were created on day 6. And the Baraita reads, one should count 6 and then observe Shabbat. We may have several questions for this Talmudic midrash. One of them, as author Judah Shulevitz writes in her book, The Sabbath World, Glimpses of Different Order of Time, is how lost do you have to be to forget what day it is? Why are we even addressing such an unlikely situation? And we will return to that question. But the argument that is recorded here between Rav Huna and Chia Bar Rav is about the following question, as Shulevitz discerns. When time has disappeared and space is a comfortless ripple of white sand, should you imagine yourself inside the skin of the first human or inside the mind of God? The Talmud gives an answer to this question. It is the mind of God. To save yourself, you recreate the world. In other words, God was busy creating the world for 6 days, and then God took a rest on the 7th day. That was the first Shabbat. Adam and Eve were created on day 6. So the first day they experienced was Shabbat. The first humans received an already created world, the fruits of God's labors all week. So the Talmud asks, when everything is a blur because we have lost our bearings, when we are profoundly disoriented, what mindset should we adopt? Should we think of ourselves as Adam and Eve, heirs of a created world to which we simply react? Or do we place ourselves in God's position, and when everything is a blur and we have lost our bearings and we are profoundly disoriented, should we get to the work of world building? The answer the Talmud gives, truly a surprising answer if you think about it, is that we should enter into God's mindset and recreate the world. Let us return to the first question. How lost do you have to be to forget what day it is, to even need to rely on this guidance? And I want to suggest an answer, about as lost as each of us feels right now. Today, in 2022, in 5783, we are in uncharted territory, lost in a sea of information and misinformation, and a general air of doubt about what truth is. Political polarization and cruelty calling itself public discourse. And worst of all, a natural world that is convulsing and crying out to be taken seriously because it is succumbing to a new world order of its own. We can and should be thankful that some of the things that we love in our lives never change. God willing, we have people we love, communities that hold us, personal interests or passions, and because of this blessed city, a constant reminder of how colorful and musical and spiritually uplifting life can be. And that's a lot. But as we travel through our lives, so many of us feel lost, in a cosmic sense, lost, in a world that is so harsh, we find it hard to gaze upon. So lost, we might wonder where and when and how we are even to move forward as a community. And if that is you, if that is me, if that is us on this Rosh Hashanah, then we have our instructions from this Talmudic passage. They are not simply to take a Shabbat and then receive the world as it is. No, they are to stop and to look around and in the mindset of our Creator, begin again with the work of creation. Tonight, tomorrow, this season of the high holidays, it is not to be experienced as that Shabbat of a lost traveler who just picks up where she left off, wandering. These days are for stopping in our tracks, naming that we are lost, that this circuitous route through the world is confusing on a good day and disturbing most of the time, and sometimes filled with unimaginable tragedy and terror. And the next step on our journey must include mentally going back to the beginning and envisioning the world the way we would like it to be, and letting that image guide us step by step home. With the Torah as our blueprint, our script, we can slip into the mindset of God at the time of creation. Or for that wanderer who must start counting the days from the beginning again while he finds his way home, the Torah becomes a compass that points true north, reorienting the traveler, reorienting us to a new destination, a way of being that meaningfully responds to the threats we face, and, as in the script of any great hero's journey, denying those dark forces free passage along the narrow bridge we must tread. The only wrinkle is that, unlike those great hero journeys, the dark forces we must face are not purely external to us. They are us. And to shake them, to escape them, to blunt their impact, we must confront ourselves. Another lovely midrash on the story of the birthday of the world teaches that human beings are created a little bit from limata, a bit from below, a bit from the earthly realm, and a bit from limala, from above, from the heavenly realm. While not having anything like the understanding that we do of genetics or biology, our ancient rabbis did understand that much of the human condition is no different than that of other life forms. They understood that we eat and drink like animals, that we process our food and we procreate like animals, and that we die like animals. In this, we are from limata, we are from the earthly realm. But the rabbis also understood that, unlike the rest of nature, we rise and speak and know and understand such as they imagine angels to do, or even such as God does, that there is something divine in us as well. And in this, we are from Limala, we are from the heavenly realms. Nature, Limata, of which we are a part, might be nurturing and majestic and inspiring, but it is not just, and it is not empathetic. The elements around us and the basic animal instincts within us are amoral forces. No one understands that better than we, sitting here in New Orleans watching storms brew and seeing our coastline weather away. There is no malice in nature. It simply exists, doing what it was created to do, just like the part of us that eats when we are hungry or nods off during a long talk. But because we are a little bit of Limala, because we have a spark of the divine in us that allows us to see and understand, to know that there is a higher plane of existence, we have a different kind of power, a different responsibility, even when it's hard, even when it's dangerous, even when it's inconvenient, and perhaps even when it goes against our most immediate interests. We can make choices that are disruptive and even revolutionary in contrast to the evolutionary processes of nature around us. We, unlike other forms of creation, are aware of limited resources and climate change and natural disasters, and can understand that our current way of living is dangerous. We can identify cruelty and violence as unnecessary and destructive and degrading in our lives. We can understand that our fates are inextricably linked together, and that living side by side with other human beings, some of whom we may disagree with, is an unavoidable part of life. What we choose to do with that understanding is a measure of our moral worth. Nature, Limata, may be amoral, but we, with that Limala in us, that divine spark in us, we will either be moral or immoral. Our script empowers us to confront the dark forces not only around us, but inside us, and that ability is a secret weapon, a great tool in rebuilding the world, and the choice is ours. Using the Torah as a blueprint, as a compass, as a script for our world building in the new year may sound technical, and to some extent it is. The Torah contains laws and precepts that are specific, like the shofar that we hear on this holiday, or like building the sukkah on October 9th. And by the way, please join our sukkah building team. Or eating matzah on Passover. But the sum total of those laws and precepts in the Torah is not simply a list to check off. Rather, the sum total of those laws and precepts in the Torah is the articulation of a general direction in which to travel, the overall contours of an existence for which we should strive. The mitzvot of the Torah, our script, compel us to safeguard the stranger, the widow, and the orphan, the most at-risk individuals in a community, to be conscious of the pain of animals, never to boil a kid in its mother's milk or to take eggs from in front of a mother bird, to demonstrably be demonstrably grateful for the unmerited gifts of plenty by offering sacrifices and charity, to sanctify time through the observance of holidays and Shabbat, to never be wasteful of nature, protecting trees and eating food in moderation. And of course, we could keep going and going. These mitzvot in the Torah, these commandments, draw into relief the astounding uniqueness of human beings. If wisdom and gentleness and compassion and generosity and decency and morality are going to exist in this world, it will be because we are breathing them into being the way that God breathed air into the lungs of the first humans. And if those blessed values are absent, it will be because we have not given them life. We have gone off script. That is the effect of the Torah in our world. So in the year we are beginning, at this very moment, let us think of ourselves as acting upon that stage. We stand upon a narrow bridge, the Gesher Tsar Me'od, because life is precarious even in the best of times. We are facing off against a powerful set of foes: fear, disillusionment, denial, alienation, all of which are effectively conjuring up monsters in our midst, be they people animated by hate or storms and fires that come fast and furious because we have not been able to curb our consumption. Our basest instincts are telling us, run, get out of the way, or hide. You can avoid this fight. But then we look down. We are holding in our hands a script for a different world, a Torah filled with guidance for living a meaningful life. And we have a choice. Every moment we have a choice, and the stakes couldn't be higher. Either we give in to the harshness of the natural world and our most basic instincts and let them run their course, or we stand in the breach as only human beings animated by moral courage can do, and say to the greatest repercussions of what is coming toward us, I may not be able to stop you, but I will stand in your way, block you with my own mind and my heart and my body, with my big and small moral actions every day. I have been given a mandate by God and my tradition to build a different world, and you shall not pass. Shana Tova.